unprecedented level of adeptness at adjusting their work to both educate students and support families. We will also recognize the outstanding work teachers are doing across the district, learn about their new roles, responsibilities, and share lessons learned in our new no opt-out distance learning environment. Before we get started, I must thank the incredible team of people that work so very hard to make our education programs come together at the museum and now online. I would like to specifically acknowledge and thank Grace Torres, Manager of School Programs, who you'll meet a little later on tonight, the brain behind this evening's program. So thank you, Grace. Also, a big shout out to our world-class AV team, Denise Faxis and Andrew Bird. I say this every time because it's true. We could not do this without you, so thank you. And remember, if you value this and other programs presented by the museum and would like to show your thanks to us, please consider supporting us by going online to www.pam.org/donate. Also, as you watch along this evening's program on Facebook Live, or YouTube Live, post some questions for our panelists. We will try to answer as many as possible during the Q&A portion of this evening's presentation. So now, without further delay, I will hand the program over to PS 305 advocate and Citrus Grove Elementary teacher, Ms. Sandra Almeida. Welcome, Sandra.
Thanks, Marie. Thank you. My name is Sandra Almeida, and I'm a product of Miami-Dade County Public Schools, where I now teach. And as a teacher in Miami, I've served the communities of Overtown and Little River. Having grown up in Little Havana, I now proudly serve my community as a teacher at Citrus Grove Elementary, where my own schooling began years ago. Serving in the communities of Overtown, Little River, and Little Havana has made me keenly aware of the inequities which exist for students within Miami-Dade County, and that's why I decided to become a teacher champion for PS 305. PS 305 offers a fresh approach to addressing educational inequities within Miami-Dade County. We actually offer parent leadership development programs which build their capacity and leadership. Parent leaders learn about the school system to build and strengthen meaningful partnerships with teachers and schools. And they see themselves as co-collaborators that support students and school improvement in their communities. PS 305 believes that parents are one of their child's most important teachers. And now more than ever, we recognize how important it is to involve families in the fullest sense in the education of their children. Teachers are equally important, and we are on the front lines of educational equity. For this and many other reasons, we acknowledge the true value of teachers, and that's why we celebrate them during this Teacher Appreciation Week. We're excited to partner with PAM to bring a diverse perspective of the realities of what teachers, students, and parents are experiencing during this shift to digital learning as a result of COVID-19 crisis. If you would like to learn more about PS 305, please follow us on Facebook and under Instagram under the handle @PS 305 Miami. We're kicking off our Parent Power Accelerator in a few weeks, where families can learn about topics like what they should know about distance learning, what are some key issues facing Miami schools, how they can help create solutions, and how they can become advocates for their children. You can email hello@ps305.org if you would like more information. And now it's my pleasure to turn it over to Grace Torres, who is the Manager of School Programs at the Pérez Art Museum, Miami.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you again for joining us. I have the pleasure of introducing our two co-moderators for our panel tonight. But before I do so, I'd like to invite all teachers to sign up for our new program, PAM in Your Classroom. While the museum is closed, we are excited to continue to engage your students in thinking critically about contemporary art. All sessions last about 30 to 45 minutes and are provided free of charge. Through PAM in Your Classroom, you can choose from 2 sessions that we are currently hosting on Zoom. In the first session, titled Let's Talk About Art, our teaching artists will engage your students in a conversation accompanied by a dynamic slideshow presentation highlighting an artwork within our collection. In the second session, a follow-up to Let's Talk About Art called Let's Make Art. Students will participate in an art making activity based off of an artwork that we have previously covered in Let's Talk About Art. Now, let me introduce our two co-moderators. First, we have Octavia Yearwood. She is an artist, programmatic curator, and author. Octavia creates and hosts programs for arts institutions and organizations and companies nationally. Joining her will be Darwin Rodriguez. He is a teaching artist at the Pérez Art Museum, Miami, as well as a co-facilitator of PAM's Teen Art Council, or PTAC. Darwin is a trained public historian and works to contextualize PAM's collection for young learners in ways that are both meaningful and accessible. Thank you for joining us tonight, Darwin and Octavia.
Thank you, Grace. It's a pleasure to be on this panel and to moderate it. Just about myself, quickly, as Grace mentioned, I am a teaching artist at PAM. I facilitate our Teen Arts Council, and I also work as a part-time or adjunct professor at FIU. Quickly about myself, I am a native New Yorker, but to give you some context, I was in Miami for Andrew, so my roots here go pretty far back. I was a teacher for 7 years in Hialeah. I taught social studies, and I taught from 7th grade all the way through seniors. So the topic of education is near and dear to me, and I'm again honored and humbled to help facilitate this conversation. I can talk more about digital initiatives, and I'm sure we can get into this once we get into questions, but for now, I'll pass on the mic to my co-moderator, Octavia.
Hello, everyone. Octavia Yearwood here, and I'm really excited about this. I started my educational journey kind of sort of by mistake. I originally wanted to dance for Janet Jackson, and solely because I was like, you know what, I want to make a little coin, while I prepare to dance for Janet. And then one day, one of my young students' mother came to me and told me about his misbehavior, and he wouldn't be able to dance with me if he continued it. And the next month, he was student of the month. And if there's anything that shows the power of teaching and shows the power of connectivity with our young people through whatever medium that you teach, them, it's a win. So I'm excited to be here and be with you all right now. Yeah, that's basically it.
So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our first two speakers. I'd first like have the pleasure of introducing Roxana Flannery, and you guys can meet her right now.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Roxana Flannery. I am currently a teacher, kindergarten teacher at Gulfstream Elementary, and I'm so excited to be a part of this panel. Thank you very much.
Next, we'll hear from Megan Gabelman.
Hi, everybody. My name is Megan Michelle Gabelman, and or Miss G, if I have any parents or students watching right now. And I am a 3rd grade reading teacher. I've been teaching in Miami-Dade County Public Schools for the last 9 years or 8 years, and a teacher of District 2. So Allapattah and Liberty City is my stomping ground. I'm glad to be here.
Pardon me. So, my bad. And next, we're going to be introducing educator Dwanita Fields, 9th grade algebra in the Miami-Jackson Senior High School. Ms. Fields?
Of course, good evening. Thank you very much. I'm so honored to be here. Like Octavia said, my name is Dwanita Fields, and I am an educator mentor, coach, and social entrepreneur. I currently am a ninth grade Algebra 1 teacher at 9A Jackson Senior High School, as well as a founder of my own nonprofit organization called Leading with Love, which is a cultural leadership program for girls.
I love that. And next up, we have this name. I love this name, Tiffany Brave. Tell them about you.
Hi, my name is Tiffany Brave, and I teach at North Miami Senior High. I teach Algebra 1. North Miami is also my alma mater, and I also served as a city year core member there. So North Miami is engraved in my heart.
I love that. And so now we're going to be starting to ask you wonderful educators some questions and sharing with the world. And I also remind folks, if they have any questions that they want to ask, they can drop it in the chat box and we'll be able to refer those questions to our amazing panelists. So what I'm curious, educator, and would love for you all to share is, what are some of the changes in your instruction that you want to make or see made permanent? I'll repeat the question if you need it. The question is, what are some of in your instruction that you want to see be made more permanent?
So I can speak to that. As a third grade reading teacher, it is a tough year for these young guys to experience all the testing that they have in the third grade reading year. And I know in Miami-Dade, we are all familiar with that. And so something that I would love to see made permanent going into the future is the way that I have been able to customize, personalize the lessons for the kids. That is something that I do not really have the autonomy to do during the school year. So that has been transformational, and I don't see any way of going back. So.
I'd love to piggyback on that idea. Honestly, I think it's amazing because as teachers, we've had to actually think out of the box to be able to draw from different resources. They offered us a lot of PDs online too, so we could pick and choose because each of our classrooms is so unique and the needs in our rooms are so different. So I agree with Megan. It's giving us the ability to be more creative, more open-minded, and provide kids with opportunities that they might not have had in the classroom because of this situation that we've come across. So it's actually been a positive thing I've seen with my kids and my parents as well. So definitely, I agree with Megan.
If I may chime in, I think that the concept of time is something that a lot of us educators are definitely always sort of trying to get more hand on. And I'd love it if other panelists would like to revisit this question, but there's something that Ms. Fields, Dwanita, that you mentioned earlier that really stuck with me. You mentioned the many hats that you wear. And I think that's a great segue into a question I'd like to pose for you or for anybody. In what ways have your roles and responsibilities shifted in the classroom, given the current environment?
Of course. So we all know that, being a teacher is a multifaceted career where, you have to wear a lot of hats. You have to not only be a teacher, but you have to be a parent to your students. You have to be a mentor to your students. You have to be a counselor to your students, a friend. And so this new digital environment has definitely shifted our roles. We are now sort of being also tech people as well, implementing a lot more technology within our classrooms than ever before. So I feel like, not only do I wear hats within the classroom and now in this digital learning environment, but what about, a parent themselves? So I am a parent myself, and I have children of my own that I have to also multitask and be all of those things that I am being to those students. So I feel as if, not only are you, wearing a lot of hats just being an educator in general, but now you have to be more. You have to reach out to your parents more because you never know what each student's situation is, whether there's no parent in the home and now the student has to actually babysit their younger siblings. You have to be able to empathize with whatever situation that they are going through. And so you're basically a counselor, a mentor, a friend, a teacher, and everything in between. So not only did you do that before, but for even more now, you have a little additional hat that you have to wear, especially in regards to making sure your students are technologically savvy, because many are not. And parents even, I feel are even a little bit further behind than the students.
Preaching to the choir. Would anyone else like to chime in?
I agree with that too, Ms. Fields, because with my parents, I've gone on using FaceTime just to show them how to maneuver different apps and portal steps, because some of them didn't know actually how to get through the portal correctly without getting stuck. So I've used whatever means I can to reach out to them. So yeah, definitely, we've used so many new hats and additional hats to the ones that we've had. So yes, I definitely agree.
Yeah, and y'all made some really great points talking about how our young people are parentified in their homes. And a lot of times getting out of their home and getting into school is their freedom. So now, curious to know is, can you help us understand the models of instruction under the current instructional continuity plan, and what has been your approach and why? I'll ask the question again because I know it's lengthy. One more time. Can you help us understand the different models of instructions under the current instructional continuity plan? What has been your approach and why? And I think, Roxana, you just kind of touched on it a little bit with your answer, but what are some things that we're doing to make sure that we hold it all together on this new digital landscape?
Well, in my classroom, for example, I've merged because my parents have completely different schedules. Some of them work at night, some of them work during the day. And I always try to do like a hybrid model of doing some online instruction where we can actually see each other through Zoom. I'm also able to record the videos. I've done a YouTube video, so my parents that are not able to attend at that particular time can come back later and view it. I've also used the activities that they're already used to. I try to keep that the same so it's easy for my kids to continue working with formats that they're familiar with. And me personally, as a platform, I use Class Dojo, and the kids love it. The parents love it. I award them points. If they're participating in Zoom, they see their points. If they did their iReady, they see their point, and they're already used to that from the classroom. So bringing that home was a nice little transition. So I use a combination, and I try to work with each of my parents so they all know that despite the challenges they might be having at home, whether there's multiple kids at home, multiple situations, some parents are working, struggling to make ends meet, they're still able to find a time in their schedule to fit in what I'm asking them. And I'm always there. I encourage them, ask me anything you need. We'll help you through it. We're navigating and learning together.
One thing that I saw was all the things that Roxana is saying and how she had to customize and really tailor her plans to fit the needs of different families. I've also had to do that and experimented with different programs and platforms that allow the students to interact and express themselves in different ways. And when we had our first faculty district-wide professional development, we got our first preview of the instructional models in the instructional continuity plan. And I was so excited because when I watched that webinar, I saw design thinking, which, is something that I do in my graduate degree, something that I studied back in college when I was studying to be a teacher, but definitely not something that I see day in and day out at my Title I school. Design thinking is not the instructional models that we use during the school year. So when I saw that design thinking on the webinar, I was like, all right, let's go. This is going to be good. And then I have to be honest that when the pacing guides came out for that line up with the instructional continuity plan, they're coming out 2 weeks at a time. And the content that is on there is not synchronized with that design thinking kind of instructional model. So then here I am as a teacher looking at these two different things and have my kids and families in front of me. And I didn't see a way that I could use a lot of this content and really bridge that kind of approach, that inquiry, design thinking kind of approach. So I've really had to modify and make some decisions to best fit the needs of my students. So.
I also think it's very interesting to be aware of your students, and I love the freedom that gives each student their own pacing. So when assignments are given, there are some students who maybe way more advanced or faster with their materials as others. And so I love that we get to design our own pacing for our students, because, at the end of the day, they must learn and they must continue to learn, but they should be able to learn at their own pace, especially if you have students who need special accommodations. You can't expect, a student that needs special accommodations to be able to keep up with the pace that maybe a student that does not need those same accommodations. So I love the flexibility of giving students the opportunity to set their own learning pace. And that sort of goes back to the first question you posed, which was, what do you wish would stay with this whole digital learning? And that is what I do love, is that students who are, more advanced or, don't need as much assistance or, much facilitation for lessons, they can, move as fast as they would like. But those students, who need a little bit more coaching, a little bit more support, a little more intervention, those students also have the time to do that. And so I do love that about this new environment and being able to choose what works for your classroom.
If I may follow up on that, Dwanita, and also Megan, from what everyone is saying so far, without getting too jargony for our viewers, it seems as though this idea of like having an IEP or having like an individualized plan for everybody is one of the things that I think some of you folks are saying is working really well. The time to be flexible, the time to tailor your sort of pedagogical approach to each student in each situation. I'm going to ask a follow-up question on that, but before we continue, I'd just like to interject for our viewers. It's about 7:30 now, and we'll be taking questions for about another 35 minutes. And questions that are posted to Facebook will transition at that time to fielding some questions from our viewership. So that being said, the next question that I have for the panelists is, are you surprised or concerned when thinking about the sort of digital literacy gap? And I'll repeat that. Are you surprised or concerned by the digital literacy gap? And is there a gap in student investment? Is there a gap in student learning? Is there normal, what you define as normal? And I'll just let you all have fun with that.
For me, and it's been my experience, I don't believe that there's a real digital literacy gap. I think the students are more than capable of implementing or executing whatever task we give them via what clear instructions and clear expectations. I think the same barriers that were in place prior to COVID-19, prior to this pandemic, the same social and systemic barriers that were in place that inhibited students from exceeding or performing at a high level are the same ones that exist, and they've been exaggerated by the COVID-19 virus. And I believe that continues to be an inhibitor. And I wouldn't say necessarily that it's a literacy gap, because the kids are way more tech savvy. This is a technological generation. Like, everybody has a phone. Even if it's the basic Nokia phone that you haven't seen in years, everybody has a phone. We're all digitally connected. So I wouldn't necessarily say that it's a digital literacy gap. I would just say the same gaps, the same barriers, the same systemic issues, the same disenfranchised groups, the same marginalized groups, continue to be disenfranchised and marginalized and feel the effects deeper than anyone.
Snaps from me.
Look, yeah, go ahead. Sandra, were you going to say something? I don't want to.
I was just going to say, if I could speak to that, I think it's also important to highlight the differences between, like, for example, Tiffany's experience, who teaches high school students, versus myself, who teaches kindergartners. And I do see a technological literacy gap, only because I have to engage with not just the children, but the parents. And I do see that a lot of parents, at least in my community, lack that literacy with technology. But not only that, also a language barrier. Right now, I'm able to serve my students because I'm bilingual. But if I were in my the communities that I've served in the past, I don't think I could have served my students in the way that I'm able to serve my current students, because I don't speak Creole, and I couldn't have served those parents in the same way. However, I fully agree with Tiffany that this crisis has only highlighted and exacerbated the issues and challenges that our children face every single day in Miami-Dade County and beyond, as a result of systemic racism and segregated schools. And this should be the time that we really reflect on that, because now it's only made worse for those children.
When I heard the question, I thought all of the teachers were going to try to chime in at the same time. So my experience has been unlike Tiffany's experience. I have witnessed an extreme gap, and luckily for me, I evaluated or was able to see this early on. And I can give you an example. So during the school year, our students are required to take topic assessments. And, we're all in the computer lab, and, we give them a certain amount of days to complete the assignment. And so for those students who are a little bit more fast-paced, after their assignment, since we're in the computer lab, I give them an assignment. And one of the assignments was I had a set of questions. They had to type the questions. They had to respond to the questions. Then they had to email it to me, or they had to share it with me on the OneDrive. And I know that you're like, oh, well, these kids, they have these cell phones, and they're always on their cell phones. They know how to use Snapchat and Instagram and all of those things. But when it came time for them to send me an email, guess what? None of them could send me an email. I'm like, the district provides each and every student in Miami-Dade County an email, access to Office 305, and these students didn't even know that they had an email to send it, and let alone let me show them how to actually attach a document and send it to me, or to be able to share it with me using either my information. I mean, you think that because technology is so inclusive into our, how we operate on a daily basis, many of these students could not do daily basic functions that we as adults use all the time, like sending an email with an attachment or sharing a document amongst coworkers. And so I feel that it was important for me as a teacher to teach them more than just math. I think it's so much more important to teach them life skills in addition to teaching them math. So what they were doing was responding to their academic performance, but they had to reflect on their performance as well as be able to send the document to me. So trying to infuse some writing, math, as well as some technology into the classroom as much as possible. So Some of those students are much better off now that we are in a more digital learning environment, but many of them struggled early on in the school year. I'm sorry if I responded so long. I apologize.
No, you're good. You're good. You're good.
I
Someone else want
to add, yeah, just real quick, because I think it's really important what Dwanita added about the real life skills. And when we're talking about a digital literacy gap, I think we can see it in two ways. Technology is so entrenched into our daily life, adults and children. So daily life skills, we want our children to be able to function in those ways. I also think that it is important that if we are preparing our children for their future, that we have to look at what the jobs are going to be in 2030, 40, 50. And right now, that's going to be the number one industry. And right now, I do not think that we are preparing our students to be able to pursue those careers or to function in the, professional, real life ways that Dwanita was speaking about. And so when we talk about digital literacy gap, I do think it is there. But I think it is so important to not marginalize the groups that we see that in, because I have heard them described as fragile. I have heard those children be described as vulnerable, fragile, as if, a piece of technology is they can't handle that. And I think what Tiffany was talking about is so true. Like, our kids may have a gap, but they are resilient. And if you teach them something, they will learn it. It doesn't matter if they are from Liberty City, Allapattah, Title I school or not. We know our children and they learn, they pick it up and they learn. And so if we see our kids in this time struggling with investment or navigating the technology, then I think we have to ask, why is that so? Why would we see that gap in those skills in multiple grade levels, especially when this district has put so much funding into providing that capacity, that access to technology? If we have that capacity, then where is the preparation during instruction so that we are prepared for a crisis like this, right, but for their lives, for their future?
Right. And I think that as educators, I think that we perpetually see balls being dropped. And when balls are being dropped, that's where it's like the ball is like the physical representation of the gaps in it. I mean, I got a gap. I tried to use Sycamore, y'all. Forget about it. I'm done. Yeah, it's just, yeah, I don't even know. I
don't even know what Sycamore is. So that lets you know that I'm probably even far worse off than you.
Well, you know what? Blessed be to the children. But what I do want to ask, because a lot of what y'all are saying, and it's making my heart melt, because I think all of you are great examples of why teachers are and why our children are so affected by us, right? Our children are so by us because of all of this thinking, all of this energy that we put into our young people. So my question is what social emotional learning strategies will you in the next school year in response to this pandemic and its impact on communities and families? And if you need me to repeat that, I can. Tiffany Brave is out here. Go ahead, Tiffany.
Thank you, Octavia. When we're talking about social emotional learning, I think what we need to do is we need a mindset shift as far as what it is that we consider social emotional learning. Because social emotional learning is more than just a list of strategies. It's an approach. It's a way of thinking about education. It's a way to encompass emotional intelligence and develop social skills in order for our students to be able to survive in the world as people. And I think, okay, yeah, you can do it in post meditation and you can do a thumbs up check-in. You can do those things and those strategies are great. But if your lesson is not encompassing a transferable skills that the students can apply later on in life, if they're not necessarily in an Algebra 1 class, if they can't transfer those skills that they're developing, then therein lies the issue. And I think That's the primary issue as far as social emotional learning is concerned, is that people want to put it in a box, but it's supposed to work alongside with every other aspect of education. And it's extremely important that we tend to the students' emotional intelligence, because we've seen in so many respects and so many regards what happens when somebody they might have the academic knowledge, but they don't have the people skills. They don't have the social skills. They're not global citizens. They don't see the interconnectedness of us as human beings. So it's very important that we view social emotional learning as like more than just a strategy, more than just a list, but like more so an approach. Are my lessons giving my students transferable skills? Is this meaningful instruction? Or am I just teaching to a standard, which is basically teaching to a test, you know?
Wow, Tiffany, that I agree hands down, because even with my little ones, I have kindergartners, and I have to foster independence from the get-go, teaching them that they're accountable for their own stuff, even something as simple as pack your homework folder in your book bag, something as simple as that, you know, being able to socialize with their little peers on the playground. This is something that nowadays kids are more used to just grabbing a device and being focused on that and being in their own little world. But a combination of, yes, you're able to use technology, be independent, but at the same time, carry a conversation, use eye contact, and be able to relate to others. We have to start from the bottom, from our little ones. And then as they get older, especially when the middle and high school years where the hormones come in and the social pressures come in, it's even harder. You know, my hat goes off to you guys, because I've been a couple of years in high school and I know how it's like. And then seeing them from kindergartens and seeing how they grow, this is something that I am passionate about, and I agree with you, Tiffany, hands down.
Tiffany,
Yes.
yeah, I'm ready to, endorse you for whatever you want after that rousing speech. I'm really taken aback knowing that you're a math teacher and me as a former social studies teacher, to talk about this idea of like educating the whole and talking about our humanities. So yeah, math and social studies, we can work together. I'm all about that. So, and your impassioned talk really got me thinking about, like, we all, in a way, we wear multiple hats. We're trying to educate in so many ways. How do we get to the student that we struggle with reaching, especially now, given these barriers and given these differences? So that's sort of my approach to segue into this sort of like next question. How do you get in touch with a child, with a family that, you haven't seen log in to your class dojo or your Zoom, that's disconnected, that's, that maybe there are issues or a schedule difficulty at home? So what are the strategies that you all are embarking on and using? What tools are you using to go that extra mile? Because I know you guys are doing that.
If I could speak to that, it takes a literal village. I had a student who I couldn't reach, so I messaged my principal and I said, get me all the numbers on that emergency contact card. And I went down and called all of them, grandma, auntie, until I got a number to work. And that's how I reached that child. But it took me a couple of weeks of like constant, but it takes a counselor, it takes a principal, it takes your team teacher. And beyond that, we as teachers in Dade County, we right now have 3 office hours, but I would love to do a survey of how many teachers are answering texts till 8, 9, or even 10. I've gotten a text at 10:30 because you have parents who are essential workers and are still out working late, and they can only log on at a certain time. And if they need your help then, you need to help them then. So it takes 1, a village, and 2, flexibility. I feel like more than ever, I've always felt that teaching is, almost like a 24-hour job minus the sleep part. But I feel like now that is true more than ever.
I definitely agree, Sandra. I mean, it definitely takes a village. Not only do you have to invest in your students and trying to locate their parents, trying to locate the students. I mean, sometimes I even go to extreme lengths of communicating with other students that I know that they're friends with. And I'm like, hey, have you seen the student? Why are they not coming to class? Are they okay? And a lot of times you can find out more information about students from their peers than through administration. But I would like to say that my administrative team has been extremely supportive. Our math team, our math coach, and assistant principals, everyone has really been trying to find our students that are not engaged, that are not logging on. We even have, some assistance through, other supportive programs that can help us try to reach those students. And I had one student, I could not reach him, and I finally spoke to him, and I spoke to his mom, and he had told me that his father had passed. So sometimes there are reasons why students are not connecting. There are reasons why they're not engaged. And so sometimes just making that one phone call can change their path, can change how engaged they are in your classroom. But you just have to be vigilant and contact and try every method that you can to engage those students, because imagine the loss that so many of these students who are not engaged are going to experience, in that gap that other teachers next year are going to have to fill in your absence or in their lack of engagement. So let's be that village and try to get them engaged as much as we can.
Like a little moment. I'm in love. And I'm also happy to really hear that you have a squad. I mean, my question is, and I don't know, I mean, I've been in education for so long, and I throw a little shade. I throw my own little shade. So for me, this question is also a little bit comical for me. And it is, how has your professional development prepared you for distance learning? And I say comical because are they like, how much professional development has really been poured in? And then also, how long have they been just avoiding the inevitable, which is what the pandemic pushed us into, and educators have been talking about for years. So, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think I spoke a little bit about this, and you probably caught my drift a bit, that, the first webinar that was district-wide, 20,000 teachers logging in, and I was literally, my jaw was dropped while I was in this professional development, because I saw things that I learned back in college as a, budding 20-something-year-old teacher. These are the ideas that I think learning should be and that our classroom should be. And now, 8-9 years later, and going through Miami-Dade and the professional development, I see that, it is not all rainbows and everything that I thought it would be. It is not. And I don't want to be negative, but I have to, for the benefit of our children, be real. And I do not think the professional development prepared us for this. I'm right now studying. I'm studying to be a teacher of English to speakers of other languages, and blended learning is an awesome tool for that. I know in my school, though, there's a lot of teachers that are very uncomfortable, and this is brand new to them. So for them, I know that they don't have this skill set to do full online remote learning. And the day before schools were closed, in fact, the day before schools were closed, we were told that, we were going to be still doing extracurriculars. We were going to stay open. And then we had that emergency faculty meeting after school, and we were given a one-page document. And so this is just an example of the preparation. One-page document, and said, okay, teachers that have no official professional development, what's going to be your communication platform? Write it down. What's going to be your online learning programs? Write it down. That is what we sent home to children. If I showed that to any of my professors and said, okay, do I get an A? Am I good to go? Am I equipped to go teach blended learning, online learning? No. So I would have to say that we are not prepared, and that technology and the hardware is not the same as preparation. And that's for students and teachers. You're muted, Octavia.
Yeah, I know. I saw Roxana unmute her. I figured she was going to jump in.
Yeah, I was going to say that definitely we had to pull resources from different areas just to adjust them to our kids. We had the advantage in the sense that we actually worked half the year, or a little bit more than half the year with our kids. So we kind of had an idea of who they were. But I can't even imagine if this would have happened at the beginning of the school year, not knowing the kids' strengths and weaknesses, trying to adjust to the individual needs that they have in particular. And yes, we had to turn around and throw a whole bunch of information at our students, our parents, and be like, come on, we got to work together. This is what we have to do. And I have to say, I have an amazing team. I couldn't have done it by myself. I have two wonderful teachers that we come together basically on a daily basis, and we hash out how we're going to work together and disseminate the information to our students' activities, parent communication, videos, and everything. And I've had a chance to actually participate in the virtual Pam classroom activity, and it was amazing. We coordinated it with Pam, and both our classes participated, and it was amazing. And in that retrospect, we are able to think out of the box, pull from different areas and resources. And yeah, Megan, you're 100% right. We had to turn around and do it in a split second. And I'm very proud of us as teachers. Looking at the stuff that we've come around and done, the challenges we faced, man, we did it. And it wasn't easy. But overall, I think that we've come across to the kids. They know that we're there for them. The parents know that we're still there for them. And despite the challenges that every individual family might be having, or the child might be having, like my kids in particular, they need their parents in order to finish the activity. They're kindergartners. The middle schooler and high schoolers, they're a little bit more independent, but they still need that parental support. Like, hey, are you doing your work? Are you doing it? They need that accountability. That, granted, we gave that in the classroom and at home. Now it's the parents who have to do it. And I think as a group, as educators, we have surprised many people. And I think that they're looking at us now as innovators, as problem solvers, as critical thinking, whereas before we were more looked at in a different light. I think that now people are seeing what we're capable of and how we can, boom, hello, you need this? There you go, we got it for you. So yeah, definitely.
Roxana, I'd like to follow up on that. I think that you did such a great job of speaking about the ability of teachers to innovate. I think that being in the classroom and being in the classroom after several years teaches you to think quickly and think on your feet, and really be a sort of content creator, content aggregator, and I really don't think that we understand how creative we demand teachers are every day. So thank you for reminding me of that. I do want to say that we have some wonderful questions coming in on the chat that we're going to get to in about 10 minutes. But I'd like to segue to another question that's somewhat related to what we were talking about before, when in reaching a certain student and the difficulties that we've encountered. You've all talked wonderfully about how nuanced your approach is, how the one size fits all just isn't working, hasn't worked, and is definitely not working right now. And thinking about how you are trying to meet every student at their needs and give each student their own due, how do you distinguish between a student that's attending and a student that's participating? So the question is, again, how do you distinguish between attendance and participation? We talked about the kid that isn't attending, but now let's say they're attending and that's all they're doing. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Well, I think it was actually our superintendent that said attendance is an indicator of, it's an interconnected indicator of equity and access. So we know that if we're touching base, then, that's an indicator for equity and access. But I think the question that you posed, Darwin, is exactly the question that we need to be asking. Is it attendance that is an indicator of those things, of student and teacher connection? And so I think distinguishing between attendance and participation completely tells what our expectations of our students are. Do we expect them just to clock in, whether that is into the portal to mark attendance, or to sit on iReady on an automated program, in which case I can't talk to the student. They're not, doing their own work on paper or anything. And so I think that is a question that says, what are our expectations for students? And if we are not collecting information on engagement and participation versus attendance, then we're simply not in touch with reality and what's really going on. So that has been probably the biggest struggle for me in my school, definitely.
I really like how you posed that. I've been writing down everything furiously. I love how you said that attendance is an indicator of access, but it's not a correlation to participation. I think those are make that a t-shirt. That's amazing.
No, I mean, in fact, it actually came up during my faculty meeting today. I was asking the other teachers, because I've been collecting information since, before spring break, which seems like ages ago now. And looking at not just attendance, but participation with the things that I'm assigning. And I asked the other teachers at my school, hey, what kind of participation are you getting? Because it looks like our school is getting around 80% attendance. District-wide, the superintendent said that we don't have we have 2 schools under 80 for attendance, and then everyone else is above that. So then I was like, okay, is it just me? Because I have a solid 50% for active participation. So I started asking around, is it my class? Are they not invested? Am I not doing something right? And then I found that is pretty much the norm at my school. And then I've been talking to teachers at other schools. And so active participation, we're not just seeing a correlation, we're seeing a complete other picture. And so I think participation is what we should be hoping for, not the other way around.
I think we need to be careful because in these times of crisis, you're going to see, numbers thrown at us, right? And they're going to look really pretty when you tell me that there's 93% attendance in the county on behalf of children. But when you really look at how many students are actually participating and actually engaging in their learning, the numbers look very different. So I think we need to be really careful in the future. After this crisis, we've hopefully overcome this crisis when we finally do. I think we need to be really careful at the messages, how we listen to the messages that we're getting, because it's really easy to manipulate data and skew numbers and make it look like, everything was great and everything was successful when so many of our children are still falling behind even further than they already have been, due to challenges that they already face every single day.
I've heard the aphorism. I'm sorry, go ahead, Tiffany.
No, because I just wanted to say just to piggyback off of what Sandra was saying, that speaks to the importance of qualitative data. Like right now we have a lot of quantitative data and everybody is telling us about these numbers. But if you ask about individual experiences, we're going to get a completely different story. And for myself as a math teacher, I'm assigning like problems. Of course, like participation looks easier for me. It's easier for me to be like, oh yeah, they're still participating, because it also differentiates based off of subject matter. But I would say like, I'm not excited about, like, my kids are engaged because they're getting on the program. They're texting me and asking me questions, but like, is this gonna last? You know, is this important education that's taking place that's going to last them and be significant post-COVID-19? No, like, is this education, is this type of instruction what I would prioritize over whatever else they have going on? No, like, you just got to do one assignment a week. So it's very difficult when you get the individual story and then you try to match it up with the quantitative data, and that qualitative data, it just doesn't line up. And we need to find a more efficient way of painting an honest picture, and painting, not even an honest, a full picture, because the numbers, they are very true. But is this what's really taking place? If you ask somebody their individual experience, do they really feel like they're being educated in these times? And those are the questions we have to ask ourselves as educators.
Wow, 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 wow. Facts on top of facts. The manipulation is real. And that's, I mean, I think that's kind of sort of like systematically a function. So it's not even just education, it's across the board. But so we're coming towards our time where we're gonna open up the Q&A, but I do, one more question is sounding like echoey to y'all? Because I was sounding echoey to me. What's the one thing that you would recommend to parents or think that they should know? If we had to tell our parents one thing, what's that thing we would recommend and feel like they should definitely know?
I'm sorry. Is it okay if we go back to that question that was just posed? I feel that I wanted to ask the teachers that are on the panel. My concern is the type of students who are not engaged. Are the students that are not engaged, are these your high-performing students? Are these your more proficient students? Or are your students that are not engaged your lower performing students, or students who need a bit more intervention? I kind of wanted to see what each teacher's experience has been in the types of students that are engaged versus the type that are not engaged. Is that okay if I pose my own question to the teachers?
By all means.
You know, with mine, I've seen a correlation, even in the classroom, just because my kid came to school and they're not participating as much. I have to sit there and delve and prompt them and everything. It's kind of the same now. It's the same level, the same ones that were hard to reach in the classroom, needed that constant supervision and close proximity. It's actually the same now. I'm experiencing the same. And can I say they're my higher performers or my lower performers? I don't see it that way. I see it more as if, even though they were present in my classroom, but their level of participation was low, it's the same now online. Yeah, I can see them. They're might be logging into the portal, but did they do the activity? You know, it's the same. To me, in my personal experience, that's what I've seen.
In my own experience, I've seen that the students who already, for example, have attendance issues typically, or have parents who aren't as involved, I've seen that those are typically the students who are not participating. However, I think it's important to highlight that a lot of those parents, it's either because, they're working multiple jobs, or, because, they have circumstances of why, they can't be as involved as they would like. Sometimes it's a language or literacy issue. I had a parent this year who is illiterate, and that's a reality, and couldn't help with the homework. So obviously, that's going to translate to their participation in helping their student with digital learning. So I've seen, for me as well, it's not like middle, high, low. It's more like students who were already had difficulty, with attendance, involvement. Those are students that I've seen struggling to participate in digital learning.
Yeah, and for me, I also feel like I can't pinpoint the type of student that is either engaging or being successful right now or not, because I don't think that is the causing factor there. I really see the same as what I saw during the school year, and I think it goes to investment, student ownership of their own learning, of their educational journey. And I think during the school year, we struggle, especially like in elementary, we struggle getting the students to own the content, the way that we're learning, because of how we learn in the regular classroom. So now with school closures and online learning, we are depending, our whole structure and framework, no matter what lessons we have, we are depending on that home and school connection. We are depending on the investment of the family. And so I think if they did not have that investment before coronavirus, I've had a couple examples of kids and families tap in, and they're like down for this experiment. That's what we're calling it, an experiment. We're going to try new things. We're all learning together. The ones that have done that, I've seen kids that were not previously invested are now, because they are given the opportunity to be a decision maker and driving force in their own education. But that's the exception. I think to put the expectation on our families to say, oh, now that you get to be in charge and now you get to have a say in how this goes, to expect everybody to already be there and be ready. I don't think our schools, our district, have prioritized that homeschool connection to make that the norm across the board. I hope that makes sense. Yeah.
Thank you, Megan. I'd like to, I think it's really great that Dwanita reposed that question, because I think there was more to say on that. But in the, because of time constraints, I'd like to move on to some of the questions that we've had coming in through our Facebook feed and our YouTube feed. So I will reiterate the question that Octavia posed earlier and sort of leave it there if anyone wants to revisit it. What do you think, what would you recommend to parents or think that they ought to know? So that's the first one that's sort of going to be floating around. And then going into our questions chat, I'm going to start at the top. We had a question from Jaslyn Diaz that I think lines up with one of the questions that we were planning on asking you anyways. She says, now that we have publicly proven ourselves to society as capable and needed, how can we go back to taking orders from people that have never been in the classroom but consider themselves experts?
Go to the ESAC meetings.
There you go.
ESAC meetings. I mean, it's crazy. Like, I only started going, I think, last year. And I remember hearing it, seeing it, didn't think it was for me. And as I have learned that's kind of done on purpose. You know, how we use our presence and how we do not use our presence definitely has an effect on what we see go on in our schools. And so I would say that I also feel like I cannot go back, but I also know that I don't get to make those decisions. And so I would say it is a mind shift change of all of us. We all have a seat at the table to influence these things. We don't have to make it up. It is through the school improvement plan, through ESAC meetings. And that's for parents and teachers. But we have to step up and take that responsibility. But it's there for us. So I think to not go back, we have to step forward.
Come join PS05 as a teacher advocate. Come fight the good fight with us.
I want to agree with Megan. Like, there are so many opportunities for us to use our presence within the schoolhouse. And I think one thing, and a challenge for myself going back, is you know, the teacher and has sometimes there's been a lot of conflict there, right? I think it's time to utilize our voice and make proposals to administration, because administrators have autonomy within that school building. And if something works in that building, the district will adopt it district-wide or apply it to similar demographics. So I think if at this point, even if you don't consider your administrator an ally, there's no harm in writing a formal email requesting an opportunity to, you know, make a proposal, and let's see what happens. You lose every time you don't take a chance. So I think definitely teaming up with the administration moving forward. Everybody who knows me is probably like, I know Tiffany didn't say that, but that is, I think that's one way we could definitely use our power. And honestly, we have autonomy within our classrooms as much as administration thinks we don't. So try something out in your classroom. And if it's working, if your kids are performing well and they're doing well, administrators will take notice and they'll ask you to share out. And then, you know, when we're in public forums, we can share with our peers what we've been doing, and people who are genuinely interested can tap in and join in.
Amazing. We have another question. This is another good one, and let's see where we go with this. This from Facebook. What are some online sources for this emerging digital platform that you have discovered that helped you advance curiosity and creativity in learning?
Could you read that again, Octavia?
Yes. I almost thought I was muted. I was like, oh my God, did I just say all that on mute? The question is, what are some of the best online resources for this emerging digital platform, this time that we're in right now, that you have discovered that helps to advance curiosity and creativity in learning?
Oh no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to reiterate it, but if everybody understands, then we're good.
Yeah, I was going to say had the opportunity to explore more with even Brain Pop. I use Brain Pop in the classroom, and then I found different ways of actually carrying it over and then having specific activities assigned to the kids. And since they already were familiar with it from my classroom, carrying it over to the home itself was great. So I found that very useful. And I experienced the different resources inside Class Dojo as being able to use the portfolio option where the parents could upload the work of their kids. And then later on, I could showcases through Class Story, which is very similar to like Facebook timeline. And all the parents can see it and chime in. So those are two big things within my classroom that I've been able to use, carry from my classroom to my virtual classroom, and my parents and my students have thrived with it.
And just so we're clear, that's a kindergarten classroom, for those who don't know.
Yes, I have a kindergarten.
For me, honestly, I just want to share this with you all because we're all educators. Canva, you can get access to the Canva Pro account if you can prove that you're an educator, if you have an education email. So you can make your customized flyers, customized worksheets, make it pop. I think for me, that's been my biggest discovery, being able to make some creative, aesthetically pleasing worksheets for my students, if you will, because in these times, like, who wants to see 5 minus 5 on just a blank sheet of paper, you know, when I can make it pop? So I just wanted to share that with you all. Canva offers a free Pro account if you use your teacher email.
I also think we're seeing technology be used in a way, if we're not just, you know, using iReady as our check that they're getting online, but I've been experimenting and having some failures in some and then some really cool successes in others. But one thing that I have done that I definitely want to take with me into the classroom in the fall is, I'm just going to shout out Nearpod. So I don't know, maybe that can help that company out. But Nearpod, I have learned how to use all the features on it, but I have seen that I have been better able to accommodate and officially accommodate for English language learners, gifted ESE students, and using Nearpod, I am able to scaffold the content and give the kids like videos if they don't have background knowledge, or I record my voice overlay over any content slide. So I'm telling them, even though it says, write this down, I know that my 7, 8-year-olds are not going to write it down, even if they can read that. So I use my voice on everything. So I'm there with them. Now, those are accommodations that the students are supposed to get in the classroom regularly. But in a general ed setting, in elementary, when you have emergent readers, ELLs, ESE, gifted, those are our classrooms now. And I am one body. So I know as much as I try to run around that classroom, they're not all getting the services that they need. And so I would love to be able to take some of these innovative ways of reaching our students back into the classroom.
Thank you very much for everyone that's spoken so far. I love how we're already sharing resources. That's what teachers do best. I just want to say that we're getting a lot of questions and we're trying to field as many as we can, given our time constraints. So I'm just going to go ahead and ask another one. I'm trying to pick out questions that I feel we haven't touched upon in the discussion that we've had so far. So we have another question on Facebook from Morel Doucette that asked, what are additional ways institutions and museums around the city can provide support for teachers? I know, Roxana, you spoke about the digital tour that you did with, a teaching artist. I don't know who it might have been, but that being said, do any of the other panelists, would you like to speak on, again, what other resources, things that are local, digital, that you could share with each other and with our viewers?
I think my only input would probably be, and I think, Pam does a great job of this, but I think museums should definitely reach out to the communities that often don't have access to that cultural capital. Students who have never stepped into a museum, have never, had these experiences. I think just reaching out to those communities more and reaching out to the teachers and, really delineating how you guys offer support to those communities, which again, I think Pam really does do that, because I've been on a field trip to Pam and like every school that I've worked at, and I've only worked in, Overtown, Little River. So I think that's the most important thing.
I agree. And I really like the fact that my classroom, we got to physically go to Pam, and then we had the virtual classroom. I think if other institutions and museums in the future, once we go back to the classroom, they can offer that, it would be great for me, particularly if I could take my class virtually to a field trip. And having those resources, maybe installing a camera in the room that the kids can see, interact with the person doing the presentation. I think that would be amazing. Something that we can bring into the classroom when we go back. That would be great.
Yeah, I think virtual reality is definitely aligned with where we're perhaps like Darwin, we are running out of time. I do want to ask this one question, and I feel like this could possibly be the last question as we get into our closing and our wrap. And I thought that this question was great. And this question is from Amina Mitchell on YouTube. And in what ways should feedback and grading for students be handled during this time?
Oh, I want to take
y'all's faces.
Let me start. You know what? I found that I have needed to provide a lot of rationale to my students. Like one of my kids, my students and I, we have a very open relationship. Like they feel very comfortable telling me their honest opinion. And he was like, outside is closed. Why is school still open? And I think when you provide a student with rationale, I had to explain to him, like, look, your instructional level is already not on grade level. Like, And the more time we spend out of that classroom, the more knowledge you lose. Like that's how our brain is. You know, the plasticity of the brain layers that you constantly in order to grow in your knowledge in that area. So I've done a lot of like neuroscience explanations, explaining a lot of things to my students, and they're like, wow, really? And I've gotten so much engagement online. Even when I'm speaking to the parents, I always let them know, like, when I start off a phone call, the first thing I ask is, how are you doing? How are you feeling? And then we can get into the whole, yeah, he has a Z because he didn't do a lesson. And then I have to also provide the parents with rationale as to why it is important and let the parents know this program is available throughout the summer. I think just explaining something to somebody, and you don't owe anybody an explanation, but it helps. And they're receptive to it and they appreciate it, and you'll get a lot more engagement. And just to piggyback on like circle back to when we talked about the type of students that we were getting engagement from. I have a variety of students. I have honor students, I have ELL, I have you don't owe anybody. I have students who, I just heard something. I have an inclusion class. I have a variety of students. And what I found is across the board, I've gotten way more engagement, way more participation when I explain to them why this is necessary. And I think that's the biggest feedback tool for me. All right, Megan.
I think you were asking about assignments, and I think when you think about what we're going through right now, there are two things that come to mind.
Not assignments. What should feedback and grading for students to be handled during this time? And I'm gonna, we're on fire. You know what I'm saying? Bulls in 96 right now. We on fire. We shooting shots. We out here. But our conversation does have to end in literally 2 minutes. So I'm gonna give another 30 seconds for anyone to kind of sort of give their little wrap up on this question so that we can close it up. Yeah.
I think for grading, I think it's important to be very flexible and also to have high expectations. Making your material accessible to all of your students and understanding that they may be going through something that, we don't have any control of and they don't have any control of. So being very open to being very flexible in how you're grading. And I have, given all of my students as much time as they need to be able to complete their assignments and grading. They have all the time that they need in order to be able to adjust with whatever it is that they may be facing emotionally, whether they're sharing one device with several siblings or they don't have a quiet place. I think not only having high expectations, but also being very flexible at this time. I think that is the key word when you think about the question.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dwanita. So here's our time. And I want to say that if any of our other teachers want to add on to this, I believe they're going to possibly be saving this on the Facebook, saving the video. So I would encourage you all to engage with the folks that were over there underneath the and answer some of their questions, because y'all are a brain trust right now. And for the folks that are watching it right now, if you love this conversation, please stay connected with PS 305 to learn more about how parents and teachers are coming together to support schools and students. So follow them on Instagram, on Facebook. You already know we talked about numbers earlier. Get their numbers up. Share it with your friends. Their Instagram and their Facebook is PS305 Miami. And you can also email at hello@ps305.org if you want to stay in touch and learn. Thank you all so much. Where's my co-host at? We got to roll out, but
yeah,
Darwin.
Octavia, thank you so much. It was a pleasure. All I'll say is that we had some great takeaways about time, about accessibility, and grappling with all these changes. And if you're interested in the PAM virtual tours, please check out PAM's website, pamm.org, and PAM's virtual presence on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube. And it was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much, Octavia, and all of the panelists.
Thank you. Have a great night, everyone.